Imagine being stood up on Christmas Eve, the one night when everyone else seems to have someone. Maya Thompson thought she'd finally found her Christmas miracle through a blind date, but instead received the coldest rejection of her life. Just when she was ready to give up on love completely, a stranger with warm eyes asked a simple question that would change everything. "Can I sit here?" Amen. Before we dive into this emotional journey, if you enjoy the story, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. The restaurant buzzed with Christmas spirit, but all I could hear was the sound of my heart breaking as I sat alone at a table set for two. I checked my phone for the 20th time in 10 minutes. 7:47. Marcus was 17 minutes late, and my palms were sweating despite the December cold that had followed me into Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where my friend Sarah insisted I meet my blind date. The waiter approached with that particular sympathy waiters reserve for people who've clearly been stood up. His name tag read Miguel, and his eyes held the kind of pity that made my stomach clench with shame. "More water, miss?" he asked gently, refilling my glass for the third time. "He'll be here," I said, adjusting my red dress. The one I'd bought specifically for tonight after spending my entire lunch break at Macy's, trying on outfit after outfit, until the saleswoman assured me this dress was absolutely perfect for a romantic dinner. The dress cost more than I usually spent on clothes in 2 months, but Sarah insisted first impressions mattered, especially for blind dates arranged through a friend of a coworker's cousin. "Traffic, you know how it is," I added weakly. Though we both knew downtown traffic wasn't that bad at 7:47 on a Tuesday night. I knew deep down, in that place where intuition lives and hope dies, I knew something was wrong. That certainty sat heavy in my chest like a stone, making it difficult to breathe properly. My phone buzzed against the white tablecloth, and my heart leaped with relief. Finally, an explanation, an apology. Maybe he was stuck in an elevator or dealing with a family emergency. "Hey Maya, sorry, but I won't be able to make it. Saw your photos, and honestly, this isn't going to work. You seem like a nice person, but I'm looking for someone more my type. Good luck with everything." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I read the message once, twice, 3 times, hoping the letters would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating, less cruel, less final. Around me, the restaurant hummed with Christmas Eve energy. Couples laughed over candle-lit dinners, sharing bites of tiramisu, and gazing into each other's eyes as if they'd discovered the secret to eternal happiness. Twinkling lights reflected off wine glasses and the faces of people who belonged somewhere, who had someone, who weren't sitting alone reading rejection messages from men they'd never met. Everyone had somewhere to belong except me. I thought about Marcus rejecting me based solely on photos my friend Sarah insisted were beautiful and totally you, and any guy would be lucky to take you out. Apparently, I wasn't enough. Apparently, I just wasn't enough. Period. The waiter returned, his expression carefully neutral. "Will you be ordering tonight, miss?" Heat crept up my neck, spreading across my cheeks like spilled wine. "Actually, I think I'll—" There she is. A man's voice echoed across the restaurant, cutting through the soft murmur of conversation and Christmas music. I turned, hope fluttering desperately in my chest like a bird with a broken wing. Maybe Marcus had changed his mind. Maybe he'd sent that message by mistake. Maybe. A tall man in an expensive suit approached my table, but his gaze wasn't friendly. It was calculating, cold, assessing me like I was a used car he was considering purchasing. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and there was something about the way he moved, confident to the point of arrogance, that gave me chills. Maya Thompson. He extended his hand without warmth. His grip was firm but brief, as if he feared prolonged contact might contaminate him somehow. Marcus Chen. Relief and confusion warred in my chest, creating a nauseating cocktail of emotions. "You came, but what about your message?" "Yeah, about that." He sat heavily, already checking his phone as if our conversation was an inconvenience he needed to dispatch quickly. "Look, I'm going to be real with you because I believe in honesty. My buddy Derek set this up. Said you were cute in a girl next door kind of way. Real sweet. But honestly..." His eyes traveled over me dismissively, taking in the dress I'd chosen so carefully, my nervous smile, my hopeful expression. I was expecting someone more polished. My stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster that had just hit its highest peak. "Excuse me? Don't get me wrong. You seem like a nice person. Really sweet, even. But I'm looking for someone who takes better care of themselves. You know, someone who fits my lifestyle." He gestured vaguely at my outfit, my face, my entire existence. "This whole casual thing isn't working for me. I need someone who looks appropriate for corporate events, charity galas, that sort of thing." The restaurant noise faded into white static. Other diners stared, pretending not to listen while obviously absorbed in every cruel word that fell from Marcus's mouth like poison. "I spent 2 hours getting ready," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. "Right. Well, that's kind of the problem." He stood abruptly, throwing a $20 bill on the table as if paying for services rendered. "This should cover your drink and maybe an appetizer. Look, maybe you should try a gym membership. And there are some great makeup tutorials on YouTube. Real game changers." He left without looking back. His expensive shoes clicked against the hardwood floor with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his own worth, who'd never sat alone at a restaurant table while strangers witnessed his humiliation. I sat frozen. The $20 bill stared at me like proof of my inadequacy. Proof I wasn't worth a full dinner, wasn't worth basic human decency, wasn't worth anything at all. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to cry in public. Not on Christmas Eve. Not in front of all these happy couples who would probably go home to warm beds and loving arms, and the kind of life I was starting to think I'd never have. The waiter reappeared, his face gentle with a tenderness that only made things worse. "Miss, I'm so sorry. That man was completely out of line. Absolutely inexcusable behavior." "It's fine," I lied, grabbing my purse with hands that trembled like autumn leaves. I should go anyway. But as I stood to leave, my legs felt unsteady, as if I were walking on a ship in rough seas. The room spun slightly, and I realized I hadn't eaten anything since my coffee and bagel at 7 a.m. Nervousness had killed my appetite all day, and now the combination of humiliation, wine on an empty stomach, and the crushing weight of yet another romantic failure was making me lightheaded. I grabbed the back of my chair, trying to steady myself, trying to figure out how to leave this restaurant with whatever dignity I had left. That's when I heard a voice behind me, warm, concerned, completely different from Marcus's harsh tone. "Excuse me, are you all right?" I turned slowly, expecting another waiter, or perhaps the manager coming to escort me out before I could cause more of a scene. Instead, I found myself looking at a woman about my age, maybe a year or two older, watching me with genuine concern etched across her features. She had shoulder-length locks that caught the warm restaurant light, and kind brown eyes that reminded me of honey in sunlight, and she wore a simple black sweater that somehow looked effortlessly elegant in a way my expensive red dress never could. There was something about her presence that gave an immediate sense of calm, like finding shelter during a storm. "I'm fine," I replied automatically, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue like medicine I didn't want to swallow. She tilted her head slightly, studying my face with the intensity of an artist examining a painting. "You don't look fine. You look like you just got stood up, and Easter doesn't look too promising either." Despite everything, the humiliation, the rejection, the crushing weight of yet another failed attempt at finding love, I almost smiled. Almost. "Something like that," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Jordan," she said, extending her hand with a warmth that Marcus's handshake had completely lacked. Her fingers were long and graceful, with short, practical nails and a small silver ring on her middle finger. And I couldn't help overhearing that complete jerk who just left. Please tell me you're not going home to cry over someone that shallow and emotionally stunted. I wasn't planning to cry, I said, though my voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying the tears I was fighting so hard to hold back. Good, because he's not worth it. Not even close. Jordan looked around the busy restaurant, at couples sharing desserts and families celebrating early Christmas dinners. Look, this might sound completely insane, but I'm also here alone, and I hate eating alone on Christmas Eve. Would you mind terribly if I joined you? I promise I'm infinitely better company than Captain Personality who just walked out of here like he was doing you a favor. I stared at her, confusion replacing some of the pain consuming me. You want to have dinner with me? A complete stranger who just got publicly humiliated? Why not? You seem infinitely more interesting than anyone else in this place. No, she gestured toward the other tables with a slight smile. Plus, I have this theory that the best conversations happen between strangers who have nothing to lose and everything to discover about each other. Something in her tone made me pause. There was no pity in her voice, no condescension, no charity case compassion. Just genuine warmth and what seemed like authentic interest in spending time with me, which felt impossible after what had just happened. I don't even know if I have money for dinner here, I admitted, feeling embarrassment flush my cheeks again. I was expecting to split the bill, and now I gestured helplessly at the $20 bill still sitting on the table like proof of my unworthiness. Jordan's expression softened, and she sat down in the chair Marcus had vacated, claiming the space with a confidence that felt natural instead of aggressive. My treat. Consider it a Christmas gift from one stranger to another, who deserves far more than what she just experienced. I wanted to refuse. Pride demanded I leave, go home, order Chinese takeout, and nurse my wounds in private, while watching romantic comedies and wondering what was fundamentally wrong with me that made men want to fix me, leave me, or both. But something about Jordan's smile made me hesitate. It wasn't the rehearsed smile of someone trying to be polite, or the pitying smile of someone who felt sorry for me. It was genuine, warm, and held a hint of mischief that suggested she might actually enjoy my company. Why? I asked, sinking back into my chair before I could change my mind. Why would you want to spend Christmas Eve with someone you don't know? Someone who clearly has terrible judgment when it comes to men. Because, she said, settling more comfortably into her chair and signaling the waiter, you look like you have stories to tell. Real stories, not the sanitized versions most people share on first dates. And I'm absolutely fascinated by real stories. Miguel approached cautiously, uncertain about this new development, but professional enough to hide his confusion behind a welcoming smile. 2 menus, please, Jordan said confidently. And maybe some wine. I think we both need it after the night we've had. As Miguel walked away, Jordan leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. So, Maya, that was your name, right? Tell me something real. Not small talk about the weather or what you do for work, but something that actually matters. The request caught me completely off guard. Most people asked about my job or where I lived or what my hobbies were. Safe, superficial questions that never required genuine vulnerability. Jordan wanted to know what mattered to me, what was real, what existed beneath the polite veneer of first date conversation. Something real? I repeated, buying time while I tried to figure out how to answer such an unexpectedly profound question. Yeah. Like what were you hoping for tonight before Captain Charming showed up and demonstrated that evolution sometimes goes backward? The question hit me like a gentle punch to the solar plexus. What had I been hoping for? Romance, obviously. But that seemed too simple, too shallow for what Jordan was asking. I wanted to feel like someone saw me. I said before I could stop myself. The words poured out with an honesty that surprised us both. Really saw me, not just this. I gestured vaguely at myself, encompassing my appearance, my nervousness, my obvious desperation for connection. Jordan nodded slowly, as if my answer made complete sense to her. And instead, you got someone who couldn't see past his own reflection in the restaurant windows. Pretty much the story of my romantic life. Well, his loss, she said simply, and something in her tone made me believe she meant it. Really meant it. That guy just walked away from what could have been the most interesting conversation of his shallow, superficial life. I studied her, looking for signs of insincerity, for the telltale signs of someone who was just being polite or trying to make me feel better out of obligation. But Jordan's brown eyes held nothing but honesty, and what seemed like genuine interest in getting to know me better. "You don't even know me," I observed, though I was beginning to hope she might want to change that. "Not yet," she agreed, her smile widening. "But I can already tell you're real, and being real is incredibly rare these days. Most people are so busy performing their lives that they forget to actually live them." The wine arrived, a bottle of something that probably cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week, and Jordan poured us each a generous glass with the ease of someone comfortable in restaurants like this. "To unexpected meetings," she said, raising her glass with a slight smile that suggested she was as surprised by this turn of events as I was. "To kind-hearted strangers," I responded, surprising myself with how easily the words came. We clinked glasses, and for the first time all night I felt something other than humiliation and disappointment. I felt a flicker of possibility, of hope, of the beginning of something I couldn't quite name but definitely wanted to explore. Maybe this night wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning. "So, what's your story, Jordan?" I asked, taking a sip of wine that was definitely better than anything I usually ordered, smooth and rich, with notes of cherry, and something I couldn't identify but wanted to taste again. "What brings a woman like you to a fancy restaurant alone on Christmas Eve?" Jordan swirled her wine glass thoughtfully, watching the liquid catch the candlelight like liquid rubies. "Work dinner got canceled last minute. My business partner, Sarah, I'm assuming a different Sarah from your friend, came down with food poisoning around 4 p.m. Suddenly I had a reservation for 2 at one of the best restaurants in the city and no one to share it with." "And you chose eating alone in public over eating alone at home?" "Sometimes being alone in a crowd feels less lonely than being alone, you know." She took a sip of wine, her gaze drifting for a moment beyond me. "Plus, I figured if I was going to be pathetic on Christmas Eve, I might as well do it somewhere with excellent bread." I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time all night. That's surprisingly practical wisdom. I'm full of practical wisdom. It's one of my many charms. Jordan's smile was self-deprecating but warm. "What do you do for work, Maya? When you're not being stood up by men who clearly have no idea what they're missing." "Marketing analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm. I spend my days analyzing spreadsheets and trying to understand why people buy things they don't need, so I can help companies convince them to buy even more things they don't need." I paused, realizing how cynical that sounded. "It's more interesting than it sounds. Sometimes. You understand the psychology of human desire and consumer behavior. Professionally, yes. Personally, I gestured around us, encompassing the romantic restaurant, my obvious desperation for connection, my complete inability to successfully navigate the dating world. Clearly, I'm still figuring out the basics." Jordan laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest and made something tight and painful in my own chest start to loosen. "Well, based on tonight's evidence, you prioritize honesty and genuine human connection over superficial charm and material compatibility. That's not exactly common in the dating world." "Is that your professional assessment, Dr. Jordan?" That's my assessment based on watching how you handled an incredibly cruel situation with more grace than most people could manage. She leaned back in her chair, observing me with those penetrating eyes. You know what I noticed about you before I even approached your table? That I looked pathetic and desperate? No. Her voice was firm, almost sharp in its certainty. You looked dignified. Even when that absolute waste of oxygen was tearing you down in front of a restaurant full of strangers, you didn't lash out, didn't make a scene, didn't throw wine in his face, though he absolutely deserved it. You just absorbed it. That takes incredible strength. I felt tears prick my eyes again, but this time they weren't from humiliation or disappointment. They were from something I couldn't quite name. Gratitude, perhaps, or relief at being seen as something other than a failure. I didn't feel strong, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the soft murmur of conversation surrounding us. I felt small, invisible, like I was disappearing right there at the table. Sometimes strength looks like staying quiet when you want to scream. Sometimes it looks like maintaining dignity when someone's trying to strip it from you. Miguel appeared with menus, and we ordered. Jordan insisted on the salmon, claiming it was the restaurant's specialty, and I absolutely had to try it. I chose the pasta primavera, something comforting and familiar that wouldn't challenge my already overwhelmed emotional state. Tell me about your worst Christmas, Jordan said as soon as we were alone again, her tone casual but her eyes intense. Wow, diving right into personal trauma, aren't we? Life's too short for shallow waters and surface-level conversation. Plus, sharing disaster stories creates bonds. It's like comparing emotional scars. I thought about her question, revisiting years of disappointing holidays and romantic failures. 3 years ago, I'd been dating this guy named David for about 8 months. We'd been talking about moving in together, and I thought he might propose on Christmas morning. Oh no, I already know this doesn't end well. I'd been dropping hints for weeks, showing him engagement rings online, talking about our future together. Christmas morning arrives, and instead of a ring, he gives me a gym membership and a book called How to Be the Woman He Wants, a complete guide to self-improvement. The memory still stung, even after all this time. Apparently, I needed to improve significantly before he could commit to a long-term future with me. Jordan's mouth fell open, her fork stopping midway to her mouth. Please tell me you're joking. I wish. The book had chapters on everything from how to dress for your man's success to cooking his favorite meals to managing your emotions and relationships. It was basically a manual for erasing yourself and becoming whoever he wanted you to be. Please tell me you dumped him immediately and burned the book in a ceremonial fire. I wish I could say that. Actually, I tried following the book's advice for 2 months before I realized I was slowly disappearing, becoming this empty version of myself who bore no resemblance to who I actually was. I took a larger sip of wine, needing the liquid courage to continue. What about you? Worst Christmas? Last year, I was supposed to spend Christmas with my ex-girlfriend Rachel. We'd been together almost 2 years, and we'd planned this elaborate Christmas Eve dinner. I spent 3 days cooking, decorating the apartment, buying gifts, creating the perfect romantic evening. Your ex-girlfriend? Yes, I'm gay. Is that okay? There was a vulnerability in Jordan's voice that made my heart ache. Of course it's okay. I've never... I paused, realizing how this sounded. I mean, I'm sure I've met gay people. They just never told me or I never asked. God, that sounds terrible. It doesn't sound terrible. It sounds honest. Jordan's smile was kind. Anyway, Christmas Eve arrives. Rachel calls around 6 to tell me she's spending the holiday with her real family instead. Apparently, after 2 years together, I still didn't qualify as real family. That's horrible. She said I was too intense about holidays, that I put too much pressure on myself to make everything perfect. According to her, normal people don't spend 3 days preparing Christmas dinner or cry during Hallmark movies or believe that holidays should feel magical. But that's exactly what makes holidays special, I said, surprised by my own vehemence. The effort, the intention, the belief that some moments deserve to be celebrated. Exactly. That's what I thought too. But Rachel preferred low-key celebrations. Pizza and Netflix instead of home-cooked meals, practical gifts instead of thoughtful ones. She said I was exhausting to be in a relationship with. Our food arrived, and we ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The salmon was incredible, flaky and perfectly seasoned, and Jordan insisted I try a bite, which led to me insisting she try my pasta, which somehow felt intimate in a way I hadn't expected. "This is amazing," I said, savoring the complex flavors. "You were completely right about the salmon." "See? Sometimes strangers give the best recommendations." Jordan's smile was playful. "That's another one of my theories." "You have a lot of theories." "I'm a very theoretical person. I have theories about everything. Why the best conversations happen after 9 p.m. Why Christmas lights make everything look more magical than it should. Why the people who hurt us most are usually the ones who don't deserve us." Good theories, especially the Christmas lights one. I looked around the restaurant, taking in the warm glow of the holiday decorations. You're right. Everything does look softer, more welcoming under these lights. Even a broken heart looks prettier under Christmas lights. Is that what we're talking about? A broken heart? I don't know. What do you think? I considered her question seriously. I think it's disappointment and loneliness, and maybe a bit of relief that I don't have to pretend to be interested in someone who clearly wasn't interested in me. Relief is underrated on the emotional spectrum. What about you? Broken-hearted over Rachel? Not anymore. Now I'm just grateful she showed me who she really was before I wasted more time trying to be someone smaller, quieter, less myself. Want to get out of here? Jordan asked as we finished the wine, her eyes sparkling with something that looked like a mixture of mischief and hope. I know this sounds completely insane, but I'm not ready for this night to end. Not even close. I glanced at my phone, surprised to see it was already 9:30. Time had disappeared while we talked, dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. Where would we go? Everything's probably closed on Christmas Eve. Walk to see the Christmas lights. The city looks absolutely magical this time of year, and I have a theory to prove about Christmas lighting making everything prettier than it should be. Yes, the theory you mentioned before. Exactly. Plus, I want to hear more about your stories, and restaurants aren't exactly made for the kind of long, meandering conversation that reveals who people really are instead of who they pretend to be in public. 20 minutes later, after Jordan had insisted on paying the entire bill despite my protests, we were walking down Fifth Avenue, bundled in our coats, our breath creating small clouds in the cold December air that looked like visible proof of our words floating between us. Jordan had been completely right. The city was utterly transformed. Every storefront glowed with lights. Decorations told stories of winter romance and Christmas magic, and even the usual urban chaos seemed softer, more romantic, as if someone had applied a filter that made everything look like a movie set. "Tell me about your family," Jordan said, as we stopped in front of Tiffany & Co., both of us staring at a display of diamond necklaces hanging on miniature Christmas trees. "Are they the kind who ask you every time they see you when you're getting married?" "Small family, basically just me and my mom. My dad left when I was 12. Midlife crisis involving a 25-year-old dental hygienist in a red convertible." I was surprised by how easily the words came, how natural it felt to share pieces of my history with someone I'd known for less than 3 hours. My mom remarried a few years ago to this really wonderful man named Frank. They live in a retirement community in Sarasota now, and they send me photos of their shuffleboard tournaments and complaints about the community pool temperature. Do you miss them? Every day. But I'm genuinely happy they're happy. You know, They deserve that peace and contentment after everything they dealt with. My dad's abandonment, the divorce, starting over at 50. Siblings? Extended family? No, only child, which means all the pressure to provide grandchildren and carry on the family name falls entirely on my shoulders. I laughed, but it came out slightly bitter, tinged with the weight of expectations I wasn't sure I could meet. At this rate, they'll be waiting a very long time for grandchildren. Jordan stopped walking and turned to me, her expression serious beneath the glow of the streetlights. Can I ask you something deeply personal? Haven't we already crossed that bridge and burned it behind us? Do you actually want children? Or do you just think you should want them because that's what society expects of women your age? The question hit me like a punch to the stomach, stopping me in my tracks. What do you mean? I mean, when you imagine your ideal life 5 or 10 years from now, does it include children running around calling you mama? Needing you for everything from scraped knees to homework help? Or are they just there because that's the script you think you're supposed to follow? I opened my mouth to give the automatic answer. Of course I wanted children. Didn't every woman feel that way? But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself actually considering the question, examining my assumptions and expectations with a clarity I'd never applied before. I don't know, I admitted finally, the honesty feeling both frightening and liberating. I've never thought about it that way. I always assumed wanting children was just part of wanting a relationship, part of the package of finding someone to build a life with. That's completely valid. Most people don't question the script they've been given. We're so busy following the predetermined path that we forget to ask if it's actually the journey we want to take. We resumed walking, passing hand-holding couples and families with children pointing excitedly at elaborate window displays. The contrast between their obvious happiness and my growing uncertainty about what I actually wanted from life felt stark and unsettling. What about you? I asked, needing to shift focus from my own confusion. Children in the future? Maybe, if I find the right person to have them with, and if we both actually want to be parents instead of just checking boxes on some social checklist. Jordan glanced at me sideways, her expression thoughtful. But I'm not willing to settle for just anyone to fulfill other people's expectations about what my life should look like. I'd rather be alone and authentic than in a relationship and pretending to be someone I'm not. Is that why you and Rachel broke up? Different visions for the future? Partly, but mostly because she wanted me to be smaller, quieter, less enthusiastic about the things that mattered to me. Jordan's voice became thoughtful, tinged with old hurt that had been processed but not forgotten. She said I was too much, too passionate about things that didn't matter, too emotional about holidays and birthdays and small moments that make life worth living. What kind of things? Like spending 3 days cooking Christmas dinner because I wanted it to be perfect. Like crying during romantic movies because I believe love should feel overwhelming and transformative. Like believing that relationships should feel like coming home and going on an adventure at the same time. I stopped walking again, struck by the poetry of her words. That's beautiful, Jordan. That's exactly how love should feel. Rachel thought it was naive and unrealistic. She said real relationships involve compromise and practicality, not fairy tale emotions and grand romantic gestures. Rachel was wrong, completely, utterly wrong. Jordan's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. You really think so? I know it. Anyone who thinks passion and enthusiasm are flaws to be corrected doesn't deserve to be in a relationship with someone as genuine as you clearly are. Something shifted between us as we stood there on the sidewalk. The air crackled with an energy that had nothing to do with the Christmas lights around us. The space between us felt charged, electric, full of possibility and potential, and something I couldn't quite name but definitely wanted to explore. Can I tell you something? I asked, my heart racing as if I were running instead of standing still on a city sidewalk. Anything. It's been so long since I felt this comfortable with someone. With anyone, really. And I know we just met a few hours ago, but it feels like I've known you for years. Like we're speaking the same language, even though we just learned each other's names. I know exactly what you mean. Jordan's voice was soft, almost a whisper. It's like we're reading the same book, even though we're on completely different pages of our lives. We found ourselves standing in front of the massive Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center, surrounded by tourists taking photos and couples ice skating below, children pressing their faces against the barriers, mesmerized by the lights and magic and promise that Christmas Eve held of transformation and miracles. "Make a wish," Jordan said, nodding toward the tree that towered above us like a beacon of hope and possibility. "On a Christmas tree?" "Why not? It's Christmas Eve, the most magical night of the year. If there's ever a time when wishes might come true, it's right now, in this moment, with all this beauty around us." I closed my eyes and made a wish. Not for love or romance or any of the things I thought I should want. I wished for more nights like this, more conversations that mattered, more people like Jordan who saw the world in colors I'd forgotten existed, who made me feel like exactly who I was might be enough. When I opened my eyes, Jordan was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, but that made my stomach flip with anticipation. "What did you wish for?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the celebrating city around us. "I can't tell you. It won't come true. That's only for birthday candles. Christmas wishes work completely differently." "How do they work?" "They come true when you share them with the right person at the right moment." "There's something I need to tell you," I said, as we found a relatively quiet bench overlooking the ice skating rink, the words tumbling out before I could stop them, edit them, or make them sound less desperate and pathetic. I'm kind of a complete disaster when it comes to relationships. Jordan sat beside me on the cold metal bench, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something warm and subtle that reminded me of vanilla and winter nights, and the comfort I'd been seeking without realizing it. What kind of disaster are we talking about here? The kind where no relationship has lasted more than 6 months in the last 3 years. The kind where I analyze every text message for hidden meaning and subtext, and still somehow miss all the obvious red flags that apparently are visible to everyone except me. I pulled my coat tighter around myself, as much for emotional protection as physical warmth. Tonight wasn't my first disastrous date. It was just the most publicly humiliating one. Tell me about the others. All of them. Seriously? You really want to hear my complete catalog of romantic failures and bad decisions? I want to hear your stories, Maya. All of them. The good, the bad, the embarrassing, the ones that taught you something important about yourself. So I told her everything. About James, who turned out to be married with 2 kids and a wife who had no idea he was using dating apps. About Michael, who ghosted me after I mentioned wanting to meet his friends. Just disappeared like he'd never existed. About David and his self-help books and gym memberships. About the parade of dating app disasters that had led me to accept tonight's blind date. Men who lied about their age, their job, their marital status, their basic human decency. The worst part, I said, my voice getting quieter with each confession, is I keep thinking it's me. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with me that makes men want to fix me, leave me, or treat me like I'm not good enough as I am, like I'm sending out some signal that says, please don't take me seriously, or feel free to treat me badly. Jordan was quiet for a long moment, watching the skaters glide in circles below us, their movements graceful and effortless in a way I envied. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Can I tell you what I think? I need an outside perspective because my inside perspective is clearly completely warped. I think you've been dating boys who want a project, not a partner. They see your kindness and mistake it for weakness. They see your openness and think it means you're desperate, or needy, or willing to accept whatever scraps of affection they're willing to throw your way. She turned to face me fully, her brown eyes intense under the glow of the Christmas lights. But the right person will see those things as incredible strengths. How can you be so sure? You barely know me. I see them as strengths, and I just met you a few hours ago. Jordan's voice was matter of fact, as if stating something obvious. Your ability to have hope after so much disappointment, that's not naivety, it's courage. Your willingness to be vulnerable with a stranger, that's not desperation, it's bravery. Your capacity to find humor in your own pain, that's resilience. That simple statement hit me with physical force, tightening my chest with emotions I couldn't name. When was the last time someone had seen my vulnerability as anything other than a character flaw to be fixed or exploited? Your turn, I said, needing to deflect from the intensity of her words and the way they made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. Tell me about your romantic disasters. Fair is fair. Jordan laughed, but the sound was hollow, steeped in old pain that had been processed but not forgotten. Where do I start? There was Sarah, different Sarah from your friend, who broke up with me via text on Valentine's Day because she decided she wasn't actually attracted to women. Just going through a phase. Texted me on Valentine's Day. 3 months of dating and she couldn't even bother to call. Just, hey, figured out I'm straight after all. Thanks for helping me experiment. Good luck with everything. Jordan's voice was bitter with the memory. Then Jessica told me I was too gay for her comfort level. What does that mean? It means she wanted to try dating women but didn't want anyone to actually know about it. She wanted all the emotional intimacy and physical connection, but none of the social reality of what it actually meant to be in a relationship with a woman. Jordan's hands clenched into fists in her lap. I was supposed to be her secret experiment, her wild adventure that she could hide from family and friends and co-workers. That's horrible. Absolutely horrible. It was educational, I'll say that. I learned I'd rather be completely alone than be someone's dirty secret or embarrassing phase or experiment with sexual identity. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the skaters and families and couples all living their Christmas Eve moments around us. All of them seeming to have figured out something about love and connection that continued to elude us. And then there was Rachel, Jordan continued, her voice getting softer. 2 years of my life with someone who spent the entire relationship trying to convince me that my emotions were too big for polite society, that my enthusiasm was embarrassing, that my belief in romance and magic and the possibility of true love was childish and unrealistic. Can I ask you something personal? I said, then immediately laughed at myself. I mean, something more personal than everything we've already shared. At this point, I think we've moved past personal and into some territory of complete emotional transparency. When did you realize you were attracted to women? Jordan smiled, and for the first time that night she looked almost shy, somehow younger. High school. There was this girl in my art class, Maya Rodriguez. She had incredible hands. Artist's hands, you know. Long fingers always stained with paint or charcoal or whatever medium we were using that day. I spent entire classes just watching her work, mesmerized by the way she moved, the way she looked at every project like it was the most important thing in the world. Did you tell her how you felt? God, no. This was small-town Ohio in 2008. I could barely admit to myself how I felt, much less tell anyone else. Jordan's expression became wistful, lost in memory. I spent years trying to convince myself I was just admiring her artistic talent, that my fascination was purely aesthetic. It took until college to finally accept what I'd always known, but was too afraid to admit. What about your family? How did they react when you came out? My parents had a complicated reaction. They love me, I know that, but they also spent several years hoping it was just a phase I'd grow out of. My mom still asks if I'm seeing someone special, instead of asking if I'm dating anyone. Like she's hoping I'll surprise her with a boyfriend someday, and we can all pretend the last 10 years never happened. I'm sorry. That must be incredibly difficult. It's okay. They're trying, which is more than some people get from their families. and they have gotten better over the years, especially after they met Rachel and saw how happy I was. Jordan's smile turned rueful. Of course, after Rachel and I broke up, I think my mom secretly hoped it meant I was done with women for good. What about you? Jordan asked, her voice cautious. Have you ever thought about women? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and danger, and something that felt like a mixture of hope and terror. My heart started racing, and I felt heat creep up my neck despite the December cold. I started, stopped, started again. I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes I think I've been so focused on trying to make things work with men that I never considered other possibilities. That's not uncommon. A lot of people spend years following the path they think they're supposed to follow, without ever asking if it's the path they actually want to take. Is it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A path I should consider. Jordan's eyes met mine, and I saw something vulnerable and hopeful and terrifying in their brown depths. I don't know, Maya. What do you think? Before I could answer Jordan's question, it started to snow. Light, perfect snowflakes that caught the Christmas lights and made the whole world look like we were inside a snow globe someone had just shaken. The timing felt impossibly perfect, as if the universe was providing a soundtrack for this moment that already felt surreal and magical and completely outside the realm of my normal experience. It's snowing, I whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break whatever spell had fallen over the night. Perfect timing, Jordan said softly, her voice full of wonder. Christmas Eve snow is the best kind of magic. It's like the world is wearing its finest outfit just for us. The snow fell harder now, dusting our shoulders, the empty bench beside us, the ground around our feet. Most families had retreated indoors, leaving the skating rink to the hopeless romantics and night shift workers heading home after long Christmas Eve shifts. But neither Jordan nor I made any move to seek shelter. We should probably find somewhere warm, Jordan said, but she didn't sound like she wanted to leave any more than I did. In a minute, I replied, not wanting to break whatever spell the snow and lights and Jordan's presence had cast over this perfect, impossible moment. Jordan unwrapped the cream-colored scarf she'd been wearing around her neck, something soft and expensive-looking that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and draped it around both our shoulders, pulling us closer together on the cold metal bench. Better? She asked, and I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Could smell that vanilla scent more strongly now, more clearly, could see individual snowflakes caught in her locks. Much, I managed, though my voice came out slightly breathless. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the snow transform the city around us, and I realized I'd never felt so present in a moment, so aware of every sensation and emotion and possibility swirling around us like the falling snow. Jordan, I said finally, my heart pounding hard against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Yes? Thank you. For tonight. For saving me from what could have been the worst Christmas Eve of my life, and turning it into something I'll remember forever. Thank you for letting me save you, and for saving me too without even realizing you were doing it. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the falling snow. I was pretending to be okay when I asked to sit with you, but the truth is I needed this conversation as much as you did. I was faking confidence and self-assurance, but I was desperately lonely, wondering if I'd ever find someone who sees the world like I do. I turned to study her profile under the glow of the Christmas lights, admiring the elegant line of her nose, the way her lashes caught snowflakes, the slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You seemed so confident when you approached me, so sure of yourself. I'm excellent at faking confidence. It's a survival skill you develop when you spend most of your life feeling like you don't fit anywhere, like you're always slightly out of tune with everyone around you. You fit here, I said without thinking, the words escaping before I could edit them or make them sound less desperate. With me. Tonight, you fit perfectly. Jordan turned to look at me, and something in her expression took my breath away. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she was smiling, and the combination was so beautiful, it physically hurt my chest. Maya. Yes. I'm going to do something that might be completely inappropriate, and you can absolutely tell me to stop, step back, or pretend this conversation never happened. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs, I was certain she could hear it. What? Instead of answering immediately, Jordan reached up and brushed a snowflake from my cheek, her fingers lingering there for a moment, warm against my cold skin. The touch was gentle, hesitant, but sent a wave of electricity through my entire body. You're beautiful, she said simply, her voice barely audible over the falling snow. Not just pretty or cute, or any of those superficial compliments people use when they're trying to be nice. Beautiful inside and out, genuinely, authentically beautiful. Jordan, I began, but she continued before I could finish the thought. I know we just met a few hours ago. I know this is happening incredibly fast and might seem crazy, but it's been so long since I felt this connected to someone. And I can't let this night end without telling you that, without being completely honest about what's happening between us. The world seemed to slow down around us. The city sounds faded into a distant hum. The falling snow created a curtain of privacy around our bench, and all I could see was Jordan's face. All I could feel was her hand still on my cheek. All I could think about was how I wanted this moment to last forever. I feel it too, I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion, and cold, and something that felt like the beginning of everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. This connection, whatever it is, it's like finding something I didn't even know I was looking for. Can I kiss you? Jordan asked, her voice so soft I almost thought I'd imagined the words. Every rational thought screamed that this was happening too fast, that I barely knew her, that I'd never kissed a woman before, and had no idea what I was doing or what it meant or what would happen after. But my heart, my traitorous, hopeful, brave heart, knew exactly what it wanted. Yes, I whispered, with a certainty that surprised me. Yes, I breathed, the word escaping like a prayer, a promise, or both. Jordan leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to change my mind, to pull back, to remember all the reasons why this was complicated and confusing and completely outside my normal experience. But I didn't want to change my mind. I wanted this moment, this perfect, impossible moment, under the Christmas lights and falling snow with someone who saw me as beautiful, exactly as I was. Her lips were soft and warm and tasted like wine and possibility, and everything I'd been missing without realizing it. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant, questioning, and then deeper as I responded, my hands finding their way to her coat, pulling her closer, needing more of this, of her, of whatever this was becoming. Jordan made a small sound of surprise and pleasure that sent heat flooding through my entire body, and I realized this connection, this feeling, this perfection, was what I'd been searching for in all those failed relationships, with men who wanted to change me, or fix me, or make me smaller. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard, our foreheads pressed together, our breaths creating clouds in the cold air that mingled and disappeared like visible proof of what had just happened between us. Wow, I whispered, my voice shaky. Yeah, wow. Jordan's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. How was it? Your first time kissing a woman? I nodded, suddenly shy, feeling my face heat despite the December cold. Perfect, I said honestly, surprised by how easily the word came. Absolutely perfect, like coming home and going on an adventure at the same time. Jordan's smile grew even brighter. That's exactly how it should feel. Can we do it again? Right now? Right now, and later, and tomorrow, if you'll let me. Tomorrow. Jordan took my hands in hers, her fingers warm despite the cold. I know this is moving incredibly fast, but I don't want this to be just one magical night we remember fondly. I want to see where this goes. I want to take you to breakfast, hear about your dreams, introduce you to my questionable taste in reality TV shows. I laughed, giddy with possibility and wine and the surreal nature of the entire night. You watch reality shows? Religiously. It's my most shameful secret. I love reality TV. The trashier, the better. See, we're absolutely perfect for each other. 4 hours later, we were sitting in Mel's diner, open 24 hours, sharing a slice of apple pie that had probably been made last week, and talking like we'd known each other for years instead of a single night that had somehow changed the entire trajectory of my life. The snow had stopped falling, but the magic lingered between us like a secret we were still learning to share, still trying to understand. I can't believe I'm saying this, I said, stealing another bite of the pie that was surprisingly delicious, despite its questionable freshness. But I'm actually grateful Marcus stood me up tonight. Seriously? Jordan's eyebrows rose in surprise. If he'd been a decent human being, if he'd actually shown up and treated me with basic respect, I never would have met you. I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth, struck by the profound truth of what I was saying. I never would have had the most important conversation of my life with a stranger in a restaurant. I never would have discovered that everything I thought I knew about myself might be completely wrong. Jordan smiled, her eyes sparkling with mischief and affection, and something that looked like pride. Just wait until you get some practice with this whole kissing women thing. Tonight was just the beginning. Is that an offer or a threat? It's a promise. The diner was almost empty, except for a few night shift workers drinking coffee, and a couple of insomniacs who looked like they'd been there since the Carter administration. Christmas music played softly from speakers that were probably installed sometime in the 1980s, and the fluorescent lights should have been harsh and unflattering, but somehow even they couldn't dim the glow I felt radiating from somewhere deep in my chest. Tell me about tomorrow, Jordan said, reaching across the sticky Formica table to take my hand, her fingers warm and steady and exactly right. What does Christmas Day usually look like for Maya Thompson? Honestly, pretty pathetic. I usually sleep until noon, order Chinese takeout because everything else is closed, and binge-watch Christmas movies while feeling sorry for myself and wondering why I can't figure out what everyone else seems to understand instinctively about love and relationships. I squeezed her fingers, marveling at how natural it felt to hold her hand, how right this connection seemed despite being so new and unexpected. What about you? What does Christmas look like for Jordan Clark? Incredibly similar, except I cook an elaborate meal for one person and pretend I'm not working out my emotions through food while watching the same Hallmark movies and crying at the predictable happy endings. Jordan's smile was self-deprecating but warm. I usually spend the entire day telling myself that being alone is a choice, that I'm independent and self-sufficient and don't need anyone else to make me happy. Want to be pathetic together? Start a new tradition that doesn't involve either of us pretending we're okay being alone? Jordan's eyes lit up like someone had just offered her the best Christmas present she could imagine. Are you inviting me to spend Christmas with you? Our first Christmas together? I'm asking if you want to create something new, something that belongs to us. A tradition that doesn't involve either of us eating takeout alone, cooking elaborate meals for one, or pretending we're not desperately lonely during the most family-oriented holiday of the year. Yes, she said without hesitation, her voice overflowing with an enthusiasm that made my heart race. Absolutely, completely, enthusiastically, yes. We sat there grinning at each other like teenagers who'd just discovered they liked the same band, and I realized that somewhere between the humiliation of being rejected and the magic of falling snow and perfect first kisses, my entire understanding of who I was and what I wanted had fundamentally changed. Maybe I should warn you, I said, suddenly nervous about all the ways I might disappoint her when the magic of this night wore off. I'm a terrible cook. dangerously bad in the kitchen. I once set off the fire alarm making toast. I'm an excellent cook. Problem solved. I'll handle all the food prep. And you can be in charge of moral support and taste testing. And I cry during Christmas movies. Even the bad ones. Especially the bad ones with terrible acting and predictable plots. I'll bring tissues and probably cry with you. I'm completely obsessed with happy endings even when they're completely unrealistic. And I have no idea what I'm doing with any of this. The dating thing, the falling for someone I just met thing, the believing in Christmas miracles and love at first sight thing. My voice got quieter as I listed all my uncertainties. I don't know the rules or the etiquette or how any of this works. Jordan brought my hand to her lips and kissed my knuckles gently, the gesture so tender my eyes filled with tears. Maya. Yes? I don't either, and that's okay. We'll figure it out together. One day at a time, one conversation at a time, one kiss at a time. The waitress refilled our coffee cups with a kind smile that suggested she'd been observing our entire interaction with the fond approval of someone who recognized young love when she saw it. Outside, the city was slowly waking to Christmas morning, and I realized I'd never felt so awake, so alive, so present in my own life. I should probably go home eventually, I said reluctantly, not wanting this perfect night to end, but knowing that reality would eventually impose itself. Get some sleep before our first Christmas together. Me too. Jordan pulled out her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. Can I get your number? I know we made plans, but I want to be able to text you good morning and make sure all of this wasn't just an incredibly vivid dream brought on by too much wine and Christmas magic. We exchanged numbers, and Jordan immediately texted me. Best Christmas Eve of my entire life. Sweet dreams. Beautiful. I replied, typing, Thank you for saving my night and maybe my entire understanding of who I am. Thank you for having the courage to say yes to something completely unexpected. Outside the diner, we stood on the sidewalk in the early morning light, neither of us wanting to be the first to leave and break whatever spell had carried us through this perfect, impossible night. This is completely insane, I said, looking at Jordan's face illuminated by the pale dawn light, memorizing every detail. I don't do things like this. I don't kiss strangers or make plans with people I just met or believe in love at first sight or Christmas miracles. What do you believe now? I considered her question seriously, taking stock of how much had changed in the space of a single night. I believe in the kindness of strangers. I believe that sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them, when you've completely given up hope. I believe Christmas miracles are real, and sometimes they come disguised as beautiful women who ask if they can sit at your table, and I believe you're going to kiss me goodbye, and I'm going to spend all of Christmas Day thinking about it and counting the hours until I see you again. Jordan stepped closer, her hands finding my face, framing it like something precious worth protecting. You're absolutely right. She kissed me softly, sweetly, like a promise of all the kisses to come, all the conversations we'd have, all the discoveries we'd make about each other and ourselves. When we pulled apart, I felt dizzy with possibility and hope and the absolute certainty that my life had just taken a turn I never could have imagined. Merry Christmas, Maya, she whispered against my lips. Merry Christmas, Jordan. I watched her walk away until she disappeared around the corner, then stood there for a few more minutes, just breathing in the cold morning air and the lingering scent of her perfume and the promise of everything that was about to begin. My phone buzzed with a message. Missing you already. Is it Christmas yet? I replied. Not soon enough. Thank you for the best night of my life. Thank you for saying yes to the impossible. As I walked home through the quiet Christmas morning streets, passing early risers heading to church and families already gathering for holiday celebrations, I thought about how 12 hours ago I dreaded this holiday, convinced I was destined to spend it alone and miserable, wondering what was fundamentally wrong with me that made love so difficult to grasp. Now I could barely wait to wake up and start a new tradition with someone who saw me, who really saw me, and liked what she found. Someone who made me feel like exactly who I was could be enough, could be exactly right, could be worthy of the kind of love I'd been searching for in all the wrong places. Maybe the best gifts really do come in unexpected packages. Maybe Christmas miracles happen to people like me after all. Maybe, just maybe. This was the beginning of the love story I'd waited my entire life to live, the one I never could have written for myself, because I didn't know it was possible. My phone buzzed again. Sweet dreams. Tomorrow is the first day of everything. I smiled, clutching my phone to my chest as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my heart full of possibility and hope, and the absolute certainty that everything was about to change in the most beautiful way imaginable. For the first time in years, I couldn't wait for Christmas morning. And it was all because a stranger asked if she could sit down.